Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, episode 103.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 103 of the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Show notes page for today's episode, outoforderjameskalita.com/103. Today's sponsor is Gift for Gun Nuts, giftforgunnuts.com, where you get the history. No, you don't get history at giftforgunnuts.com. You get great gift ideas for the hunting and shooting and sports enthusiast on your holiday shopping list, updated every day from now until Christmas. So head over to giftforgunnuts.com and check them out. Today's guest is Donna Anthony. Donna Anthony is the CEO of Point Blank Firearms Instruction in Alaska, and she has over 20 years experience in law enforcement. She's worked with the U.S. Marshals, DEA, ATF, and FBI. And now, here's Donna. Donna Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate it.
So, Donna, you've had so much experience. I was reading your bio online, and it's incredible. But right now, you are the CEO of Point Blank Firearms and Self-Defense Training. Would you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Well, I started that because after I was in the drug unit for undercover for 6 years and got injured line of duty, I had to medically retire and couldn't wrestle bad guys anymore. So what do you end up doing? You kind of fall back into what you're used to doing. And so I started the firearms company. And I did it mainly just to teach up in Alaska. But then I start leaving Alaska because it gets cold in the winter. It's kind of hard on my back after the back surgery. And I start doing a tour about 3 years ago. And we now travel from like January until May. And we travel throughout the U.S. teaching active shooter courses, force on force for civilians. We'll do home protection, role-playing force on force. But we travel like to Florida, California, Mississippi, all over the U.S. every year during the winter just to get out. So that's how I started it. It's just grown from there. And I've been blessed. I've been very lucky.
Wow, yeah, that does sound like an excellent way to live, travel and shoot guns. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm retired, medically retired, but I'm having some fun while I'm doing it. How's that?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So I guess, going back a while, what inspired you to get into law enforcement?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I left to go to college and I was going to school to do Russian interpretation for the oil companies up in Alaska. And then I heard about the police academy and I was like, let's go for it. And I went to the academy in Houston, Texas, and it was fantastic. Best training I've ever had, but it was just too hot for me. So I took that experience and I was trying to get back to Alaska. They weren't hiring at the time. And I have my family, they have family in Ohio. So I got on with the Sheriff's Department in Ohio. So I worked for the Licking County Sheriff's Department for a couple of years. It was great. I loved it, but I missed home. So eventually I worked my way back. So.
Wow. Excellent.
And so from there, after work, I was a school resource officer during the Columbine time. So things changed a lot. The way our response was back then was we'd wait for SWAT, and that changed after Columbine. So from there, I left the school resource officer position, and then I went back to Alaska. I was patrol with the Palmer Police Department in Palmer, Alaska, great little town. And then I went on with the Alaska State Trooper Statewide Drug Task Force. And our task force is very unique up in Alaska. We're the state troopers, we're DEA, we're ATF. It's a combination with ATF, DEA, doing all the task force stuff because we're so shorthanded for such a large state. Been a DEA basic and DEA diversion, tactical training, SWAT training. So I was having a great time until I got hurt. So.
Yeah, and so I guess from growing up in New Jersey, I've always kind of imagined Alaska being this vast wilderness. Do you have a lot of crime there? Is there a lot to?
We do. So, when I was in the drug unit, we would actually, roll individuals into their sources and their sources out of state. We would do raids in Colorado. We do raids in Seattle. We work with DEA, fly informants, go to Seattle, work with DEA, do some takedowns. As we're working our way back, they continue on with the sources, taking them down. Everything came back to Mexico. So eventually, most of our drugs are coming from Mexico, across the border into the United States, even up to Alaska.
Wow, yeah, and they have to cross four borders. They have to get through both sides of Canada. And
Yeah, well, for Alaska, a lot of them are doing body carry. They'll select. I'm educating on our drug stuff now. Women will actually body carry inside certain areas. The other thing is they'll do them in hidden compartments. They'll ship it by FedEx, UPS, hidden compartments in vehicles. There's all kinds of ways to get things up to Alaska. So, and with us being so shorthanded in such a large area, it's very difficult. So, and we work with the military. We have the military in our unit as well, as CDSP unit. So a couple times we'd go in like Black Hawk, go land, do a couple raids, work with Coast Guard, take some meth labs off of the fishing vessels as well. So.
Oh wow, incredible. And so I imagine all of that lends really well to civilian training. How? Want to tell us how it carries over?
Yeah, so that was interesting. After I retired. After I had back surgery, I was in a brace for 7 months after surgery, and then the PT, or doing all the PT, and when they're telling me I could never do this job again, I was kind of devastated. You kind of love that stuff. So I'm so used to kicking indoors. We sometimes 2-3 times a week we do entries and raids, and so now what do you do with your life? And I had a lot of the trooper wives saying, "Hey, now that you're retired, will you teach me to shoot?" And I started doing it, not ever thinking I'd ever own a firearms company and do what I'm doing now. Never saw this coming. And from there, I thought, I should probably go get certified. And I started looking up women instructors. And there really wasn't anything out there except for the well-armed woman. So I looked up the well-armed woman, and I thought, you know what? I'll go down to Arizona. I'll get my NRA certification, but it's training with a bunch of women. And you got to remember, I was the only female with the Palmer Police Department, the only female in the drug unit. I'm used to training with men. And so when I went down to Arizona, it was their second class they ever did for women instructors. There was about 30 women, all in purple. They're kind of like kumbaya, all huggy and lovey, and I'm in the back kind of rocking a little bit like, what did I sign up for? But you know what? It was probably the best experience I ever had because I learned there's a different way of training, and especially with civilians. So I'm blessed that I got to do that and take that experience back. I opened up the chapters up in Alaska. We have 7 chapters in Alaska. Then I became the board member and now the national training coordinator for the Well-Armed Woman. And it's a fantastic organization. We have 12,000 members nationally and probably like 378 chapters. So, but anyhow, that experience to work with women and how women are trained completely different. Women need to see, feel, and ask the whys. We need every detail before we understand what we're doing. You can't just give it to us and say, do it. We want to know why. That's one thing I got out of women's training. Compared to law enforcement, you just do it. You don't ask. You just do it.
Oh wow, yeah, that is a very different perspective. So one of the trainings that I read you went through on the website was active shooter training, and so for civilians, if they find themselves involved in an active shooter, how should they respond?
Well, that's different in many situations. I mean, you have active shooter in the workplace, you're having active shooter in the malls. It depends where you're at, what you're going to do. Do you have your family members with you? The main thing is trying to get you and your family out. You should be trained if you're going to go ahead and stop a shooter. We are training active shooters in the workplace. Some companies are having them armed, being CCW certified, knowing what the laws are, and they're part of a response team. So that's kind of a selected process. And as they're doing that, they're automatically kind of doing the same thing we do in law enforcement. As soon as they hear shots, they're immediately going to where the shots are, and we'll do all the training on, how to slice the pie, how to move down the hallway, move towards the gun shots when you hear the noises. When you don't, you have to slow down. You don't know where the shooter is. But if you're hearing the shooting, you're going to go and stop the threat immediately, because within that first 2 minutes, I mean, a lot of lives are being lost. By the time law enforcement gets the call, it's normally 2 minutes after the fact before somebody can make that phone call, looking at the statistics with FBI. So within that 2 minutes, if you have somebody who's armed and who can stop a threat and who knows how to do it and who's been trained properly, we can save lives by doing that. And we are looking at that more and more. And same with law enforcement. Depends if you're, in the city or if you're in a rural area. How long is it going to take for law enforcement to get to where you're at? Statistically, an active shooter is done within 5 to 15 minutes when they looked at the statistics from FBI. Now, you look at San Bernardino, they were there in 4 minutes, and look how many lives were lost in San Bernardino. And the reason why they were there in 4 minutes, they were doing their SWAT training just around the corner, so they're able to respond quickly, but still a lot of lives were lost. So what's the next best thing that we can do, taking all this information that we have to stop an active shooter in a workplace? So that's kind of the training that we're doing. We're working with teams. A couple of the electric companies, they'll select a management team. They'll do training monthly, quarterly, and yearly training. We'll work with law enforcement as well. They know who's trained. Kind of the same thing we do with churches. We work together with law enforcement. We're not law enforcement, but you're stopping the threat. You have the right to protect yourself and others, and pretty much most of the states. So that's what we're up to right now as we're traveling throughout the U.S. And we do it all in shoot houses and doing the scenarios. And how we base that training is we give you the history of active shooters to where it used to be, to where we are now, so you understand, is this going to be a domestic violence situation? Can you de-escalate? If it's an active shooter, you know you're not going to de-escalate because they're already shooting, killing people. You're not going to talk them down. An active shooter expects to die. So there's no de-escalation. And then we go into blue gun drills, to the simulator, force on force on the simulator, verbal commands, and then the force on force with all the equipment on, and then doing the role playing. So that's kind of what we're doing nationally.
Oh, wow. That's some really intense training. And that's open to anyone that's had a certain level of firearms training?
Yeah, so you can't just be a basic handgun person. We would like you to have at least a CCW. You need to know what the laws are before you come into our course for your state. Okay, because we're not there to educate you on the laws. You should have this. And if you're an educated armed citizen, you need to know what the gun laws in your state. Just because you've been shooting all your life, that's great, but you need to know what the laws are because we want you to win the battle and the bad guy to go to jail. Does that make sense to you? I'm seeing a lot of people saying, I've been shooting all my life. I don't need to take a class. But they're the ones that are out there shooting people and they're still in a car. In a lot of states, you can't shoot over property. So know the laws in your area and what you can and cannot do.
Excellent. And so what advice would you have for some women just getting ready, getting into firearms, never shot before? But
for women? Is that what you said?
Yep. Yes.
Oh,
yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would take like an intro to basic, a very basic pistol course. I know a lot of people want to get out there and just start shooting, but you got to understand for women, they need to take a basic course to understand the handgun, how it works, how it operates, and that it's not going to go off until something touches this trigger. But in the meantime, they're afraid to just touch the gun and carry it like this because they think it might go off. So we have to get them past that part of giving them the knowledge. Once they have the knowledge of how it works, and then you're on the range and doing the hand one-on-one, working with an instructor, you'll build that confidence and just take the time to build that. I've seen ladies who are afraid or been victims, have been shot at, and we've taken them from a basic pistol class, and within a year later, they're phenomenal. They're amazing. They're not afraid. They're awesome. They're so empowered by what they've learned and the skills that they've learned and the time that they've learned it. So don't rush them. Take the time and work with them. We don't want to teach them bad habits, and you want to encourage them.
Thank you. And so a lot you mentioned working with women who've survived violent encounters, and a lot of critics to gun ownership would say that you're more likely to have the gun taken away from you or used against you. How do you answer that?
Yeah, that is very true if you don't know what you're doing. Okay, so that's why you go to training. Don't carry a gun unless you've done training. That's all I have to say on that. So the more you are trained, the knowledge, how to get it out of the holster, how to de-escalate, how to have situational awareness. Pay attention to your surroundings. Do you see a threat? Go the other way. Or use the verbal skills. Give those commands. Get back, get back. If there's like, get back, and grab him for your gun, do you think the bad guy's going to believe you? So we teach you all this. We build those skills up to make you more confident so they don't take the gun away from you.
Great. Let's see. So for men and other, anyone who's not a woman that's getting into firearms, do you have any specific advice for them?
Well, a couple things. There's a lot of instructors out there. I'm seeing that. Just check their credentials. Make sure they're legit. Make sure they have insurance. I see this new bandwagon of instructors coming out, and they want to make a lot of money. Man, there's a lot of people that are doing this because they want to help people. So look for a good instructor who wants to take the time and work with you and watch you build your skills. Make sure they're in it for the right reason.
Yeah. And I guess, so if someone wants to be a firearms instructor, it's one of the things that's always kept me from pursuing that, is that I don't feel like I could ever amass enough knowledge, in the time I have left on this earth to train other people. But what's the level of training where you could conceivably teach someone the basics of firearms?
Well, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I'm still learning. I take different courses. I take it from other instructors. I'm always looking for the best and the newest techniques. I mean, the stuff we're learning in law enforcement is still old techniques, and we're now to new techniques, and even law enforcement's behind. So I think you're never done learning. So for someone who wants to be an instructor, I see people that will take a basic class in a CCW and all of a sudden they want to be an instructor. That's not enough experience. Take some more classes, get comfortable, and then kind of take, I said, like I want to say, best practice from all these different instructors and put it together and take that knowledge and that skill. And can you understand what they're doing wrong? Can you read their target? Can you analyze it? You need to know how to do all these things to help your student be a better student.
And I always ask my guests if there are books that they recommend all gun owners should read, either about politics or firearms. Any come to mind?
Well, I love Lieutenant Dave Grossman. His books are phenomenal. It's great for military, law enforcement, and civilians and understanding stress. The newest book I have right now is called Reality-Based Training. It's a scientific approach to reality-based training and how your body responds, and then why we do the reality-based training, not just the shooting a target all day long. Because what you see is you'll see people come up, they'll shoot, bang, bang, and they drop their muzzle. Well, if we do that, what about the secondary person that's coming, or the third? So when you're firing your gun, it should be bang, bang, dropping just enough, both eyes are open, and you're scanning and you're looking for the secondary, right? If there's a secondary, there might be a third. But as soon as you drop that muzzle, and I put you on a shooting simulator or force on force, by the time you recognize there's a threat, you're trying to come up, and it's already too late to come back up. Okay, so the reality-based training, I think, is where the training needs to go after you've learned your basics, shooting at a target. Take it to the next level and how to protect yourself in your home with your family. Do you have the drills? Do you have a safe home? Do you have a safe room? What do you do? How do you do this? How do you work together with your wife? I've had situations where the husband's getting beat up at the door as a burglar's coming in, and the guy's yelling for his wife to get the gun. She's never touched a gun. She runs upstairs to get the gun, comes running down. Bad guy sees the gun and he runs, but doesn't recognize she doesn't know anything about a gun. And she always felt that he will always protect me. Well, at that moment, he couldn't protect her and she couldn't protect him. She ended up taking the class and she was the best shooter in her class. She's phenomenal. And then she went back shooting with her husband and she was out shooting him. So he came and took a class too. But it's interesting because we got to protect each other. Husbands, wives have to work together. It's no longer the men protecting us because the bad guys are going after the men first. We have to watch. Women need to protect each other. We got to protect our families. Husbands are gone overseas. Husbands are up on the slope working. We have to work together. And working for the Second Amendment rights. The men can't just hold it for us anymore. The women got to come out and support our Second Amendment rights. It's a big thing.
Absolutely. And thank you. And how can people find you?
Well, my website's www.pointblankak.com. And we also have online training. We just launched about 2 weeks ago for active shooter in the workplace. We also have it for security, armed or unarmed, active shooter in the healthcare facility, and for churches. On those, though, you have to call us because we don't want people just to get in and learn the techniques. We're talking about, ISIS and Spider or anything like that. So we're protecting what we're teaching for workplaces, but the regular one, active shooter in the workplace, is open to anyone at this point. That's just general basic knowledge of what you should do if something happens in the workplace. And there's a quiz, a test, and also a certification out of it.
Okay, great. Well, I thank you so much for being on the show. Any parting words for our listeners?
No, but thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again for tuning in to episode 103 of the Out of Order Gun Rights podcast. Show notes page for today's episode is outoforderjameskalita.com/103. If you head over there, you'll find links to Donna's training facility, their nationwide programs, their online programs, and the books Donna mentioned. And please remember to head over to Gift for Gun Nuts, giftforgunnuts.com, where you'll get the great gift ideas for the hunting and shooting and sports enthusiasts on your holiday shopping list. giftforgunnuts.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.